construct, plan, and create far removed from the kingdom that was our own. A kingdom where we created entire countries, or continents rather, as Raymond Simone likes to call them, with architecture that people of today still study, admire, and teach about. And I'm not just talking about Egypt. From the multi-level towers of Ethiopia to the Titchit-Walata settlements of ancient Ghana, we've made exponential leaps in science, art, mathematics, agriculture, and much more. And ultimately, that's why we were enslaved, right? Because no other land rivaled the expertise, skill, and overall immunity to diseases that was present in Africa. We were economically and literally the hardest to subdue, but the most beneficial thing to happen to America since its conception. Fast forward to the 21st century. After being awarded our basic human rights of freedom and trudging through the trenches to gain our civil rights, we now live in a world where pictures of us walking side by side with different ethnicities are shown everywhere, while we live walking ball and chain behind our untethered Caucasian counterparts. Mind you, none of this is to say that we all as human beings don't have problems and complications in life, but this is more so a metaphor to illustrate the power structure and delegation of privilege that we minority Americans live with on a daily basis. Our art and culture is some of the most ridiculed, yet frequently emulated in American society. We are the face of pop culture and simultaneously the poster ethnicity for crime, poverty, and police injustice. We make up 13.8% of the American population, 27% of those living below the poverty line, and over 60% of those shipped into incarceration. While at the same time we contribute billions of dollars to America's consumer market and have been arguably one of the most forward-moving groups of people in this country today.
Preach.
So what does this all have to do with today? What does this all have to do with your Black American Studies degree? And what does all of this have to do with the path you choose to walk after leaving this stage? Well, I'm glad you asked. While attending the University of Delaware, as smothering or stressful as it may have seemed at times, we have been blessed with the opportunity to achieve a higher education. And when I say this, I'm not just talking about the electives and that $40,000 paper you're going to receive in the mail in a few months solidifying your achievements. I'm talking about the higher level of cultural and social understanding we've gained from taking the Black American Studies courses taught by the beautiful brown-skinned people behind me. We've learned the unspoken history of African cultures before being snatched from our lands in classes like Dr. Maloba's History of Africa. We've learned of the fortitude and resilience of our people throughout American history in Dr. Dunbar's African American history courses. We've studied the extent of literary artistry in Dr. Henderson's Afghan Lit classes, and we've learned of the amazing potential of Black and brown men from Willie Bosket to DMX and Dr. Yasser Payne's Black Men in Prison and Hip Hop in the Community courses, just to name a few. We've been taught the glitches in the system. All these courses and more have helped to show us the extent and historical context of structural violence and oppression in America. We've learned of the mechanics behind slavery, the economic boost it provided many countries. We've learned of the creation of racism to justify the unwilling enslavement of an entire continent. We've learned of the creation of black codes and vagrant laws to incarcerate newly freed slaves without homes and a place where they never had homes to begin with. We've learned of the implementation of sharecropping, known today as incarceration, and we've learned of the correlation between economic disparity and crime. We understand the uses of the media to not only create friction within the culture, but also to perpetuate century-old stereotypes of the Black body. We've learned of the image of the Hottentot and the misuse of the brown woman figure, but we've also learned of the ingenuity of our culture. We've learned the literary genius of Amiri Baraka, Langston Hughes, Toni Morrison, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the list could go on for days. Not only have we learned of our creative integrity, we've learned of the various ways we, as a community and a culture, have sparked movements and revolutions to shape the very foundation America was built on. We've not only learned of the weight we carry, but of our strength to carry. BAMS has fused our spirits with those before us in ways we can never think of. But what happens after that? What happens 1 year down the line when you realize the real world is much more time-consuming than your college life ever was? And that is what I'm here to discuss with you today. That is what all of the aforementioned information has to do with this moment right now. We've been given all the tools to expand our consciousness and educate our culture, but we have not yet entertained how to nurture that consciousness and progress the culture. And hopefully by the end of this speech, you will not only have an understanding of what I mean when I say that, but will also have formed the beginning particles of a solution relative to your future plans. Now, being of a darker complexion in America, I'm sure we all have experienced the inequality of the machine. And at some point in time, we have been raised or known someone close to us who has been raised in the broken environment that this inequality creates. Environments ready to shout proclamations of love and togetherness that often become stifled under the smothering economic hand of unemployment, drug abuse, robbery, gang violence, police brutality, incarceration, self-preservation, and lack of education. In 1991, this is the type of environment I was born into, known affectionately to most as the hood. I grew up in an old house with my great-grandmother, mom, and little sister, but overall was very little they could do to actually protect me from the evils of my community. The stresses of the environment prove ever permeating in the life of its inhabitants. The hood forces us into positions where we must grow well past our physical years. Every day is a new war. Heat is off, so we battle cold in the winter. Air is off, so we battle heat in the summer. Home decaying, so we battle roaches and ants for space. Families broken, so we battle ourselves to survive. And parents are broken for the same reasons we are, so they battle themselves to help us survive. It's a terrible cycle void of resources and positive examples of what our future could be. I've had friends selling drugs, family on drugs, and I've seen houses torn apart by narcotics police. I've witnessed firsthand how desperate we can become with our backs against the wall, and the saddest part about all of it is that most, like me, will come into contact with these things on a daily basis, with no means to contextualize the events, no knowledge of how orchestrated and planned out the design was, and no true knowledge of where they could really be in the future. At some point, with no knowledge of a different life, you accept your surroundings as the way of life. It's just how things are, until someone or something alters your mind state. Luckily for me, I had a mom and dad who graduated from college, and although I didn't want to go at first, it was coming to college that really opened my mind to the real world. Before coming here, I had never been to Newark, Delaware, and honestly, I didn't even know it existed. And Wilmington was only 20 minutes away.
Truth, bro.
But being here taught me the true potential we have as a people, and it also made me realize how crucial it is for us to help other people like us reach this same level of success. The University of Delaware campus made it painfully obvious to me how prevalent racist ideologies still were in today's society. I had interactions here my very first year with white students who said they had never even spoken to a black person before, which for me was mind-blowing because I was from a place where almost everyone was either of black or Hispanic descent. I really never knew how oblivious others were to my minority life until I was placed in a setting where they made up near the entirety of the inhabitants. It was a new world to me, one I really didn't even expect to enter because coming from Wilmington, where the only option I'm spoon-fed is to survive, my scope of life's possibilities was small. Then when you pair that with the way schools promote the idea of college being expensive, but don't promote the knowledge of financial aid and grants, higher education seemed borderline unobtainable to me, and prison seemed like more likely an option to most. But again, this is all by design. A design you can't fully be aware of or understand until you are removed from it or at least shown in existence outside of it. And that enlightenment is what the BAMS department provided me. It gave me the words and knowledge to break apart what I experienced during childhood and relate it back to the grand scheme of social mobility and personal development. It also showed me how important it is for us to take what we've learned here and pass it down, which is something we often forget to do once we come in full contact with the ways of American life. Upon leaving the University of Delaware in 2013, I was catapulted into what true American life really is. If any of you grew up like me, when you definitely are no stranger to adult responsibilities, you've learned the value of a dollar, basic time management, bill paying, etc. But for most of us, that was still only a portion of our lives before college and during college. Once you leave, however, these things become the whole of what your actions are geared towards. Money, especially if you have your own place, is split into so many different directions, with most of the funds going towards maintaining and not advancing. Maintaining electricity, maintaining eating habits, maintaining a source of transportation, phone, good credit, internet, maintaining your home. What little money is left from that goes towards getting to work to make more money to do more maintaining and the occasional outing with friends and or family, which also comes at a price because if you think there are a lot of hands on your time now, just wait until America gets old. However, to some people, most actually, this sort of living is fine. Nothing really matters outside of being able to make a decent living and take care of intermittent provisions for loved ones when needed. We're in a world where people who look like us can be choked out on camera with no repercussions. Last fleeting breaths and cries for existence snuffed out by arms of a fairer skin. A world where 12-year-old black boys can be gunned down on street corners by local law enforcement just for having a toy gun in hand. A world where we have to bother to create phrases like Black Lives Matter because it is often forgotten that people of a darker hue are people too. In this world, our question is being able to do enough for yourself. Enough. As I said earlier, we have all received the tools to look at the world for what it is. Our minds have been removed from the matrix, so to speak, and our rose-colored lenses seeing the existence of a post-racial society have been broken and thrown away. We are awoken. BAMS has provided us with what I call the 3 C's, which is context, consciousness, and culture. And with that, a responsibility to do more for the people who made sure we could all be sitting in this room today. And I'm not just talking about your family or your friends who provide everlasting encouragement, but I'm talking about the entire cultural foundation. If it is one thing we all should have taken from BAMS, it is that we are all linked, past, present, and future. The actions of those yesterday help you become you today so that you can help someone become himself or herself tomorrow. We are reminded time and time again, whether through the subtle whispers of media conditioning or the deafening screams of structural violence, that we are to stay at the bottom of the totem pole. There will be no handouts and there will be no equality. We'll get a few college graduates and a president with a little melanin, and that will have to suffice. But this is not a future we are destined for. With so much potential to be nurtured, we have to stop idling ourselves because we can provide for our own and start thinking of ways in which we can provide for everyone like us. Just as our loyalty and resilience is intergenerational, so is our plight. We see examples of this on a daily basis. Those here before us were not trained to be monetarily progressive. We in the present lack knowledge of being monetarily progressive. On a majority level, if your parents did not graduate high school or college, there's a strong possibility that you will not graduate high school or college. If you are born into poverty, there's a strong possibility that your children will also, unfortunately, be born into poverty, or at least fall back into it at some point in life. However, those of us who have capitalized on the little privilege we have been presented, us talented temps, so to speak, have the capability to break this intergenerational cycle. We can turn our inherited disadvantages into inherited advantages. And this type of thinking can be applied to any work or occupation. If we simply start focusing more on what we can do for the culture instead of what the culture can do for us. Because the culture has already done everything it needs to. It has birthed us, nurtured us, and inevitably transformed us into the people we are today. We should no longer be looking to it for aid at this point, but seeking to aid it so that it can evolve, progress, and become a stronger, more solidified agent in the intellectual and economic development of those after us. We have to make the advancement of Black and Brown Americans as important to us as the destruction of Black and Brown Americans has been to America for the past 4 centuries. Moving forward, we must understand that BAMS is not strictly for people who want to be professors or researchers, and you don't necessarily have to be a BAMS major or minor to represent what the BAMS School of Learning stands for. There are Black students spread all throughout different schools of education here at the University of Delaware, and you are all gaining knowledge that you can bring back to our people to help them further advance, therefore helping our future be more advanced. We all choose the path we want to walk career-wise, and that path can help determine our role in advancing our people. We have all seen those in less fortunate circumstances with potential in fields they don't have the means to obtain training in, and it's our responsibility to build those people up in those situations. If you're a finance or accounting major, use that. We know even without a statistics sheet that we are monetarily disadvantaged people. Take the knowledge we've learned here and spread it throughout our community, because we're not going to get the proper education in schools we're stuck with. Del Castle ain't teaching nobody about taxes. Glasgow ain't teaching you about W-2s. William Penn ain't teaching you about government policy, healthcare, credit scores, assets, and none of these schools we all know are teaching us about our history. Schools are still preparing us for trade jobs, and we don't even live in a heavily trade-based economy anymore. So going back to the example of the finance or accounting student, take the knowledge we have been given here about economics, money management, business management, and teach your communities. Be the educators that Black parents always say their children lack in these schools, and it doesn't have to end with the children, because we adults are just as much a part of our future as they are. we can teach ourselves as well. There are plenty of black-owned businesses out here that will make a killing if they just had the proper starting knowledge, the proper maintaining knowledge, the proper building knowledge. But these are not skills that have been passed down through our generations, so we are now at a point where we have to make these skills that are passed down. We have to build up our knowledge base because no one will do it for us. Just as I said earlier, there will be no handouts. If you study criminal justice, if you plan on going to law school, take what you learned and pass it down. I know young black men and women who have been in and out of the prison system more times than a police officer guarding it, and they still barely understand the laws that bind them. Teach them. If you're a psychology major, take that back to your community. Help them understand each other. Help them understand themselves, how to communicate. Teach them. If you're a history major, take that back to your community. Let everyone know where we came from, what we've been through, so we can better understand where we are headed. Yes. If you're an engineering major, teach your community electronics, wiring, solar power, how to rebuild itself. Teach them. If you're a nursing or health major, teach your communities about staying healthy. Teach them how to take care of their bodies. Teach them, and if you didn't go to college, then spread the knowledge you gained from life experience. But these are all just surface examples to highlight my main point, which is that we have to start living for more than just ourselves if we ever want to see our circumstances change. They say that idle hands are the tools of the devil. And we all can attest that the devil ain't never done nobody no good. So let's not settle for being tools of the oppressor. Let's not fall for their games. Let's take what we have been given and spread it amongst us like the government did crack cocaine in the 80s. Let's make a change. Let's be the change that we always say we want to see. The change that will permanently alter the way in which black and brown minorities operate in America from this day forward. Yes. Let's make a real difference.
Yes.
We are not just born to be left behind. We are born to be everything and everyone I've mentioned today and more. We are ancient Egypt. We are ancient Ghana. We are Ethiopia. We are Toni Morrison, Amiri Baraka, MLK, Malcolm X, DMX, Freddie Gray, Tamir Rice. We are riots. We are protests, shattered store windows, cracked sidewalks. We are Selma 1964, and we are Baltimore 2015. We are Gil Scott Heron. We are revolutions televised and untelevised. We are everything we need to be better, and we just haven't realized it yet. We are kings, queens, gods, and goddesses. We exist, so therefore we can change. Matter of fact, we are existence, so therefore we are changed. And it is time that we all start acting like that.
You the man, okay? You the man, church. You the man, church. You the man, church.